End of a long campaign, the candidates went home to vote. Jimmy Carter to Plains, Georgia, Ronald Reagan to the Pacific Palisades section of Los Angeles, John Anderson to Rockford, Illinois. Our correspondents went with them, as they have since the start of this campaign. Jed Duval begins our report.
A small crowd was waiting outside the polling place this morning as the President and Mrs. Carter came to vote. I've talked to my wife, he told reporters, and I've decided to vote the same way she does. Outdoors, the President seemed approachable and was asked about the hostages.
I feel more encouraged about the hostages now than I have in the past, but the time schedule for their release is something I can't predict.
Did the hostage issue handicap you in your re-election bid?
Well, obviously the last year, the concern about the hostages, the frustration that all Americans have felt, I think has obviously been a negative political factor, but we've acted properly.
A few blocks away, more of the hometown folks heard a Carter stump speech. It seemed to be an impromptu review of his time in the White House, and it could serve, if he loses, as a farewell.
We've made some very difficult decisions, and every time I've made a judgment, in a time of crisis or a time of solitude, about the future of our country or the future of your lives, I've done it with the memory of my upbringing here in Plains, the fact that I'm a Southerner, the fact that I'm an American.
And at the very end of it, as the President was telling his neighbors he hoped he hadn't been a disappointment to them, he found it difficult to go on.
In the process, I've tried to honor my commitment to you. God bless you.
Hundreds of White House staffers awaited the President's return on the South Lawn.
It may be a long night. We don't know yet what the returns will be, but I understand there's a heavy turnout so far in the areas that have been reported in.
I still feel very confident, he said, and look forward to the next 4 years. Jed Duval, CBS News, the White House.
Ronald Reagan, who by the account of those close to him has been waiting for this day for 12 years, arrived with his wife Nancy to vote at the home of a neighbor this morning. There were greetings and books and pictures to be autographed at the polling place before the Reagans took their ballots into adjoining booths. Nancy Reagan had just begun marking the punch card ballot when she paused to talk to her husband around the partition.
Well, that first one was pretty exciting.
Then, as a photographer called out, "Hold up that winning ticket," the Reagans posed as motor-driven cameras chattered away like so many crickets. Asked if he would win, Reagan gave his traditional answer, that he was cautiously optimistic, but allowed us how he was in pretty good spirits.
I feel good, but of course, I have my fingers crossed, and it's going to be a long day.
Reagan then went for a haircut before a meeting with his advisors over lunch. The Reagans will have dinner at the home of friends and then come to this Los Angeles hotel, the one at which they celebrated his 2 victories for governor, for what they expect to be another victory celebration. His advisors, who are virtually certain that he is going to win, have already begun meeting to begin planning for the transition to a new presidency. Bill Plant, CBS News, with the Reagan campaign in Los Angeles.
John Anderson was in a bittersweet mood on this pristine morning in Rockford, Illinois, as he walked with his wife and children to his hometown polling place. Victory seemed out of the question, but his wife said the campaign had brought other rewards.
He said it all last night. He tried to wake up America.
Until the end, Anderson endured accusations that his candidacy was costing President Carter the election.
He has not communicated to the American people a vision of the country that they share with him for the next 4 years. So I think to try to assess blame against some other candidate in the race would not be correct.
Anderson will watch the returns in Washington tonight. He's not expected to receive more than 8% of the vote. 12% would be counted as a moral victory, Anderson strategists say, a compelling reason to try again. Ed Rabel, CBS News, with the Anderson campaign in Rockford, Illinois.
CBS News has learned that Senator Henry Jackson, a Washington Democrat, has agreed to serve on a transition team if Ronald Reagan is elected president. It's understood that other Democrats also have agreed to join that team. Senator Jackson has been mentioned as a possible Secretary of Defense in a Reagan administration. Election day is a great equalizer, and in the voting booth, the vice president speaks with the same authority as the president. Vice President Mondale cast his ballot this morning in the village of Afton, Minnesota, near St. Paul, where his wife's family lives. Mondale's name is expected to help Carter in Minnesota, but the vice president called the election as tight as any race could possibly be. And in Houston, Texas, George Bush, the Republican vice presidential candidate, arrived early at the voting booth with his wife, Barbara. Bush said, if the rest of the country goes the way this district does, we're in like a burglar. Former Wisconsin Governor Patrick Lucey, John Anderson's running mate, voted in Madison.